Welcome to the Changemaker 20 Summit, a convergence of visionaries and change agents, igniting global transformation. Through collective innovation, we embark on a journey to conquer challenges, spark inspiration, and pave the way for a radiant tomorrow. A shared endeavor shaping the future we envision. Distinguished attendees of the Changemaker 20 Summit, we now welcome you to today's workshop. The workshop acknowledges that exploring the intricate symbiosis between nature's spoliate inhabitants and the agricultural ecosystem unveils a transformative narrative how agriculture can regenerate Mother Earth. Lessons from microbes, fungi, and more. This compelling saga delves into the vital role played by microbes and fungi in revitalizing soil health and fostering sustainable growth. As guardians of nutrient cycling, these unsung heroes enhance plant resilience, reduce the need for harmful agrochemicals, and mitigate environmental degradation. Our esteemed panelists, each of force in their respective domains, are here to ignite conversations that transcend boundaries and open new avenues for positive impacts. Today, we have with us Bowie Yin Sam Kang. Bowie dedicates her time and energy towards creating decolonial and non-capitalist economies, honoring indigenous people, our knowledge, and living a regenerative, harmonious life on Mother Earth. She works with community to set up food waste composting system and promotes agroecology and regenerative ways of living. Bowie is a regular contributor on Medium.com, where she writes about regenerative practices, climate and social justice, and decolonial and alternative economies. Economies that heal and the wonders of nature. Bowie, please take the stage, and without further ado, let's commence this invigorating exchange of ideas with everyone. Over to you, Bowie.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anuma. I would love to also introduce our two other um, speakers today in our workshop. The first is Clement. Clement is a Ghanaian entrepreneur who is passionate about promoting positive change in the world. He is the founder of several startups and foundations, including Green Village, Green Gold Social Enterprise, Green Works Ghana, and Claytech Services. His focus is on regenerative agriculture economies, providing safe drinking water, informal education, skills and talent development, and creating regenerative communities in Africa. With over 20 years of experience working with rural communities, Clement is dedicated to finding indigenous and creative solutions to improve lives. We also have Andres Morales, who is from Costa Rica. Andres is an innovative industrial engineer turned permaculture designer and biological fungi-based pest control specialist. With a successful 12-year corporate career behind him, he now focuses on harmonizing housing developments with nature by applying nature's processes and advocating for simple, long-lasting solutions over complex quick fixes. By harnessing the power of fungi-based products, he aims to enhance the vitality of the soil, elevate agricultural yields, and foster a thriving ecosystem for the benefit of farmers, their products, and the environment as a whole. So thank you so much for inviting us. We're very excited. As I start every meeting, I like to do a land acknowledgement, just because we are the current residents of this planet, but before us and after us, there have been, and will be many more people that will have taken care of the land for us, and their knowledge and their wisdom should not be forgotten. So I wish to acknowledge the land that I work, live, and play. I live in Costa Rica, Cartago, and for thousands of years, it has been the original homeland of the Wetar indigenous nation, a community that has survived and still survives in the settlement in Zapaton, Rica. Today, this meeting place is still their home, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be in their territory. And I invite anyone who's watching, will be watching as this is being broadcasted and recorded, to also, recognize the place that you're from and that you reside. So without further ado, I would love to hand over to Clement. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Bowie. Privilege and honor to be in this space with everyone, and it's an honor to reach out to the rest of the world with some of what we are doing. I think I've been introduced well enough. What we're going to look at today will be how we are able to use regenerative agriculture method, specifically syntropic farming, to regenerate soils, especially in Ghana, and to show an example that it can work everywhere if we are able to do it. So that's my presentation. Maybe I will share our presentation and we can walk through this process together. So I think I would not need so much introduction. But our focus is on harmony with the soil. How we all know that we came from soil, and then eventually we'll be going back to the soil. So, so it's important that everything that we do, we acknowledge the soil and all that is interconnectedness to life, and for which reason I'm here to present to you. Now, a simple case study of what we have been doing in the past few years is a soil or a land that has been degraded for more with extensive pest usage and extensive machine usage on soils, and has depleted the soil microbes and destroyed the topsoil over a period of more than 45 years. Now, this destruction has made it difficult for smallholder farmers to produce food on this piece of land, and I'm talking about more than 3,000 hectares of land space. Now, just imagine smallholder farmers who used to produce food here were taken away out of their ancestral lands and then converted into government projects. And now, after more than 45 years, it has been handed back to these people, but they cannot use it because the land is so depleted. Now, just to show you that our perfect system of growing food, it's not helping our communities, and therefore this danger is becoming more and more exposed to us on a daily basis as we continue to watch more and more biodiversity being destroyed. Now, some people may not know this effects, how dangerous this effects is for smallholder farmers in Africa, but for most people, this is our entire livelihood has been affected by this. I think my screen sharing is stopped. Let me try again. So for us, this is very important that we help local farmers, especially smallholder farmers, to see the possibility of how they can change the soil without using complex methods. I think the major challenge is that we talk a big deal about solutions, but some of these solutions are not very practical for the local farmer. And as a result, it always it's far-reaching to solutions. So either they have to bring in something from external to bring to their farms, or they have to depend on some patented product to be able to turn the soils around. This has not been a solution, and it will continue as long as external inputs are required. It will continue to put pressure on local farmers in terms of finances and resources. I do believe that when we take care of nature, nature will definitely take care of us. And so I think that this is where we have gotten to, that if humans can learn to work with nature, nature will take care of us. As our local indigenous tribe says, we are part of it anyway. So the current story I want to share is, as a local farmer, I have been engaged in producing moringa, which is a plant that most people from India will know, and most people in the tropical regions will also know. And initially, we knew that moringa had the potential to turn soils into fertile lands. So we went into this farming system, trying to turn this 3,000 hectare land into a moringa plantation. And the resulting things we realized was that humans, as we work best in diversity, nature also works best in diversity. So putting plants in a monoculture will definitely have an effect on it, which sometimes we will not realize until in a long run when we start to see a decline in production. And this is what normal people will always complement with the conventional synthetic fertilizers and whatever to try to complement the plants. But in the case where diversity is present, naturally people and nature will thrive, will do better. What we also need to understand is that nature will always bring its best version forward, just as we are a better version of our parents or the previous generation. Is the same way that nature will always try to build a better version forward. And therefore, with diversity, it is actually possible when we talk about genetically modified things. Nature always modifies its own thing to bring the best version forward. So actually, trying to modify things is just a matter of studying nature and how it's able to bring the best version of whatever product we want to bring forward. And we can enhance that and bring that forward instead of trying to use our own synthetic ways of modifying these things. Now, with what we have been doing is very simple, using biomass, which is naturally abundant in every area that you find yourself. Usually, even in the desert, you will find a crop or a plant that is able to push through in the most difficult circumstances. Now, the key to regenerative agriculture is identifying these plants and working with them. Instead of seeing them as enemies, you work with them. Every single area is there for a purpose, and if it was not naturally desert, then it means it has the potential to turn things around. Now, it is our human activity or sometimes excessive climatic conditions that can move a place from depleted from abundance to depletion, and it's the same system we can use to reverse that. Once you study the climatic conditions, we can work with the area and then especially identifying potential plants that works best in the area and using them to bring more biomass into the area. And once there is more biomass, the soil has the potential to turn around. You're going to increase more fungal activity, more bacterial activity, more worms in the soil, more microbes in the soil, and this will only go better for the farmer the more you enhance the biomass in the area. So for us, this was the case where we were able to turn this huge land space from almost desert land where local farmers could not produce any food to become a place of vibrance and energy, of food and biodiversity. And this was amazingly simply by understudying what works within the area. So syntropic farming is not really a one-size-fits-all solution. it works with what works best in your local area. For us, we identify some grasses that were considered stubborn in the local area, and we use them to we harness their potential in bringing more energy into the land. And by bringing more energy into the land, life started thriving. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's understanding what works best in your area and harnessing it for the land in food terms of food production. Now, like I said, we moved from this desert land into starting to produce more fruit. Now, what you see here was what we were able to accomplish by turning this deserted land into abundance. And of course, within your area, you can also find different plants that you can work with in order to turn. Of course, it might be different from what we are having in our area, but then it is still possible to turn depleted soil into abundance. The next stage of our project is that we understand that solutions are already everywhere. I think that is the challenge with us, is that we spend so much time trying to find solutions. But the solutions are there. They have been with the indigenous people. They have been with our various research universities. They have been with so many of our knowledge base within our communities. So we are not reinventing something new. Composting has been with us many generations past. So we are not going to have to start composting today. And so the solutions are with us. It's just a matter of us putting more emphasis and more importance on that, and also training and enhancing the local capacity of most people. If you go to Ghana, you will find materials that can easily be used as compost, even basic house waste. If you go to India, you will definitely find materials that you can build compost out of that are easily available. So the solutions are not really inventing any wheel. It's basically understanding what you already have. So for us, this has been crucial, a point that we want to continue to enhance. We have more than 500 million smallholder farmers across the world. And if all these can use their local resources to enhance their soil, we have a great potential to turn our global crisis around. So yeah, thank you very much. If we do have space for questions, but I do like to share that we are available to support any farmer or any group of people who want to learn about these methods and how they can apply it within their local context. And we're more than happy to help. So thank you very much, and over to you, Bowie.
Thank you, Clement. I have a quick question. How do you pronounce that word at your top left corner, and what does it mean?
Answer in our tribal is the Guan language. It means thank you.
Anse, Clement. I was amazed by those huge papayas on that tree. I was like, whoa, that is a papaya. Thank you so much for sharing. I don't know if we should do, maybe we could do questions, and then I have a question actually. What grows well with moringa?
In our experience, there's you have to first and foremost, we realized that corn didn't do very well, but some things like potatoes, some things that grows underneath it does very well. So obviously the beans, the squash, the garden eggs, most things that are underneath it will do very well. The other part is also understanding what your production needs are. Are you growing it for the leaves, or you're growing it for the seeds? So based on that, you can also determine. But it is an assumption that moringa doesn't need attention. I think just like any other thing in nature, it does need attention. The soil needs attention. What we have been doing in the past years is skipping the steps in production. What happens is we need to feed the soil, and the soil feeds the plant. With synthetic agriculture and all this method, they are focused on the plant. The plant shouldn't be the focus. The plant is a secondary result as from the soil. It's the same thing. If you want a baby to be born, you don't focus on the baby, you focus on the mother, and the mother produces the best results. And so it's important that we keep more focus. I think academic has been so much focused on the baby instead of the mother. The soil is the mother of all life, including as human beings. So if we can just focus on the mother, if we focus on the soil, there's so much more we can get. If you feed the plant has nothing to give back. But if you feed the soil has a lot to give back.
Thank you, Clement. Awesome. Great answer. Shall we move to Andres's talk?
There I am. Yes, thank you, Clement, for presenting your project. It's been great to watching all these changes that you have done in all those years, all that dedication, and I really resonate with the context that we don't need to invent new things, right? Like most of the solutions are already there, and that kind of it's a good bridge to my topic. As you might see from from my bio there, I work with biological pest control, and it is basically the nature's solution to balancing pests that are not really pests, right? Like when we think about what we want to get rid of with a pesticide, is either an insect, fungus, or animals, or also even herbs. Like herbicides are really common in different kind of plantation. If we look at all those are pretty much nature manifestations into a productive system. They're part of the ecosystem. What they do is that they delay the production process, right? If as Clement also said, if you're doing a monocropping system, if you have a mango plantation, which I think are common in India and these sides of the tropics as well, you might see that conventional plantation is hundreds of these mango trees with zero or no herbs or weeds growing below them, and pretty much having the soil deprecated from all these nutrients. The approach of regular agriculture or conventional agriculture has been that we are similar to Western medicine. If you have a ache or a pain, you go to a pharmacy and you get a remedy for that, right? Your head hurts, you go and get an ibuprofen or something that will ease your headache. The same happens with agriculture, right? If there is any signs of a illness, then we jump and look to pretty much control the fire instead of preventing it. One of the reasons why I started looking into fungi-based solutions for managing pest controls was the Costa Rican current state and the pretty honorable place of being the #1 country in pesticide use in the whole wide world. We're only a 5 million country, 5 million people country, and 51,000 square meters. So it's kind of a small country, and we have the biggest per square meter pesticide use. Our main crops are bananas, coffee, pineapple, and sugarcane. I think those are the biggest or the top 80% of the crops that we grow here. All of them has some sort of pesticide use. There wasn't a study by the United Nations that was pretty revealing on all this data. And one of the reasons or one of the conclusions after this study is like, even while people know that pesticide use is not precisely great for their own health, the health of the soil, the health of their farm and their production around it, most people keep on doing these methods because they have become so dependent on the technical assistance from these commercial brands that are advertising their products, right? So think about a coffee farmer in a remote area that doesn't have much interaction with the outside world, and all the interaction that he gets is this seller coming into his farm asking all these questions about his production, caring pretty much for what's going on in there. So more than a seller buyer relationship, it kind of feels like a friendship, right? Like these people are so remote and so alone in their journey, then when somebody empathize with them in any way, they will take it because that's as much as they can get. So that's pretty bad in the sense that these companies know what they're doing. Of course, that it's not a matter that they have money or not. It's a matter that they need them, so they use that lever and they pull it as much as they can. So these people don't have any other way to grow food, and it becomes like a cultural thing. So when I start to see this data and all these complexes, it's like, oh, I cannot just overlook and feel and tell people what to do, right? Like this that you're doing is bad, or your products or the products you're applying to your farm are bad. It is that they don't know anything different than that. So the change is not in the product, it's more in the mentality, it's on the culture, it's on how they perceive the production as a whole, other than just the money that they're gonna get at the end of the year for their harvest. When I was jumping in trying to come up with a way to get involved in agriculture, I tried farming for a bit. I soonly find out that I didn't have a green thumb, meaning that labor or being working outside was maybe not the best use of my time, and the plants will eventually regret it. So I figured that having an active participation in the supply chain for agriculture will be where I can do the most. So that's where I started studying fungus, and find out that there is little information about them in general, right? Like fungus remain as one of the kingdoms or the families, nature families, that we don't have much exploration yet. We know a lot about animals, we know a lot about plants, insects, and all these other bacteria, but fungus or their production or their scalable applications have been reduced. So I found in two specific type of fungus that are great towards managing pests, and those are the ones that I'm developing or trying to come up with tests. These are no new. I did not invent them. They have been isolated and they have been worked upon. There are several papers around the globe with their uses. I'm just trying to adapt to local strains of this fungus and try to come up with experiments locally to earn trust of farmers, and from there try to incorporate them into their production habits, into their production culture, and not see them as this unknown supply that they are doing, because that's right now how they sense them. There is the one that I'm most fascinated. They're really fascinated, but I'm gonna expand a bit on the fungi that controls fungus as well. So it's fascinating how nature knows how to balance things. This fungus, its name is Trichoderma. What they do is it's a it's a fungus that is really fast growing. So they eat a lot of the nutrients that are available to be degraded by the fungus. So they do that earlier than any other pathogen fungus around. So what that means is that whenever you have a pathogen that is affecting your plants, this other fungus is gonna come eat all the nutrients available, so the pathogen is gonna not grow in the way that they need to thrive. So the population of the pathogen fungus or the bad fungus is controlled. In addition, once all the nutrients are eaten, this fungus will continue its growth. The good fungus, the Trichoderma, will continue its growth, and it will start to do this process of mycoparasitism. What that means is that it's gonna start eating the pathogen fungus. So it first control its growth, and now it's eating it, so it doesn't expand any further, and it's actually eradicating them from the ecosystem of that plant. How does that work? It is amazing when you see it on a microscope. This is the fungus just start creating more hyphas, and these hyphas go into the other fungus and start eating it out. Like you see a jaguar eating a monkey, it is exactly the same. Then another aspect of it is like, well, let's say that you don't have a visible evidence that you have a pathogen inside. So instead of the conventional method of going and trying to put the fire out, you can make a preventive measure, apply it before. So the fungus is already into the ecosystem. So whenever a pathogen wants to come in, it's already going to find all this colony of the good fungus in, and it's not going to allow it to come into the ecosystem. So it also works great as a preventive measure. There are two other aspects significantly important for this fungus, is that other than this this pathogen fungus control, they also enhance the tertiary root creation. So the tertiary roots are where most of the plants get their nutrients from. That's pretty much like whitening or opening their mouth or making a bigger mouth so the plant can eat more food or more nutrients. So that's very important whenever you are starting seedlings or starting cuttings. It is a good way to prevent fungus to come in, and also in stimulating the root creation. The other good aspect is that it also stimulates some auxins creation. So these auxins, they are related to vigor of the plant, and also they are related to the antibiotic systems. So basically, it's gonna have a healthier plant. Just it is just stimulating the health system of the plant. So it is gonna protect it from other funguses. It's gonna protect it from any other disease that wants to come in. It's gonna enhance the root creation, and it's gonna work as a preventive measure, not only as a fire stopper. So all of this is done by one single fungus, and it is out there in nature. One will need to do it is isolate it, then propagate it in the correct methods. But it's a nature-based solution to a problem that we have been relying so long into chemical and other solutions that eventually run out, because the fungus is smart, like all nature beings. They start to create these ways of rejecting the chemical, becoming resistant to it, and then the chemical is no longer going to be a good use for that disease. So the best way to deal with an intelligent pathogen is to deal with an intelligent solution. And nature gladly already provides that for us. What we need to do, and we tend to forget so much as a human species, is to listen what the nature is telling us, right? To understand that the fact that we invented this language and that our brains grew this to this size does not mean that we're the smarter ones. And the nature is in all interconnectedness, so wise that it already has all the possible solutions to many of the problems that we have, that are nature based. The problems that we invent for ourselves, that's for us to resolve, right? But nature can help us in many ways, and this is just an example. We can also look at other funguses that attack insects, other funguses that decompose organic matter, so we can get compost piles going faster, or we can have septic systems working faster as well. There are also many initiatives, or in some areas of the world, of having corpse, like dead bodies already signed to a tree, and having that person to be a nutrient for trees, right? All that happens because of fungus and bacteria. Not that we don't know how they work, it's just that we have tend to neglect them and put them aside, thinking that we can come up with better solutions for waste, for transitioning these bodies back into land, and pretty much the way that we're producing food. I just wanted to bring these topics up. Those are mostly the fungus-based solutions that I'm aware of. There are many more solutions out there. I think that we are in some sort of fungal revolution, in the sense that every day there are more fungi-based products, solutions that are happening in many areas, going from fabrics, going from designing um, systems for mobility in big cities, all the way to agriculture. So let's start paying some more attention to people investigating fungus, trying to come up with more funds for this, trying to get out of the dilemma of the unknown is bad. The unknown is just unknown. We don't need to know yet what the outcome is gonna be. So that's part of my piece, and just glad and so honored to be here. Hopefully there are any questions, or if not, I can share my contact details and be available if anybody wants to follow up in this session, and the recording of this session.
Thank you, Andres. For anyone who wants to, let's say, start their own fungus on their farm, how do you
Yeah,
start? How did you
a
start
great
that
a
process?
great kickoff for seeing how fungus works is trying to reproduce what is called, in many other places, like efficient microorganisms, or EMs. So what you do is you go to the forest, you go with a little bag, and you try to look beneath the, like, shaded places where you can see this mulch cover all these dry leaves, and below that you scarp a bit, and you're gonna see this kind of white, already like mycelium like aspects. And this is a full colony of fungus. What they're doing is degrading soil. So the idea is, like, how do I take this and reproduce it? So to reproduce it, you need a carbohydrate. People use rice, or rice dust, or corn, or any other form of carbohydrate that is pulverized, ideally, so the mycelium can come in and start colonizing it. You're gonna need a energy source that is mostly based from sugar. In these sites of we use a lot of sugarcane, or unrefined sugarcane. byproducts. You can use beets, you can use any other kind of sugar that is available. And next, you do you need water, because water is life, and it's gonna help reproducing these funguses in many ways. It's a very simple process. You mix all ingredients together, the coverage from the forest, the carbohydrate, the energy, and the water, put them all together, put them in a plastic drum, tied it up with no oxygen, pretty much try to press it to a point that is all really compressed. Put a cap on top of the drum, leave it for 45 days, and you're gonna see that all this mixture that you left is gonna be all white, meaning that that little colony that you took from the forest is already reproduced. And with that, you can make a tea and start spreading it in your garden. You're gonna see that your compost pile is gonna grow even faster. It's gonna compose even faster. You're gonna see that nutrients are gonna become more available to plants, which is a struggle that most farmers have, because they add nitrogen to their soil, but the plant doesn't know how to eat them. It is not broken, so the plant can eat them. So this works as that. It breaks nutrients into the soil, so it is an easy way to do it. I have a small thing that I can maybe share later, on how to reproduce these things, and it's really easy and a good way to get involved with fungus.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Clement, anything to add?
Yes, I think that the bottom line of it is creating the right environment. I think, and the right environment always with when it comes to microbiology, and it all boils down to enough biomass. There's a lot of biomass, there's a lot of land cover. Soil is not supposed to be bare, because just imagine if we do not have any cover on our skins, if we didn't have anything protecting us, I'm sure we also start getting skin burns and lots of skin problems. So soil is not meant to be bare. That is why sometimes the weeds come, because nature realized that if this is bare, then I need to cover it. So the problem with humans is that as long as it's not benefiting us, we want to get it out. So we call it weed. But naturally, um, when in our farm and we have a lot of grasses, and I say, let's go and harvest, the first question I get is, we are going to harvest weed, weeds, but we see it as harvest because everything that grows out of the ground and you can use it to help another form of nature to go forward, whether it's mulching, whether it's growing enough composting and whatever, it is essential to move for the next, to get better soils and better systems. So like Andrea said, everything is already here. It's just simply matter understanding, identifying, and also learning, because always we want to control the system. What about learning to study what the system wants to teach us, and then using that to grow better systems? And I'm sure if we take care of nature, as I always say, that nature will always find a way to take care of us. Thank you.
Agree. Your comment perfectly segues to my my little presentation I have here. But before that, I see Anuma has popped up. What do you have for us? Never mind.
We have
Okay, I'm going to share.
so you guys can carry on till 10 more minutes.
Okay. Yeah.
Perfect.
Can you see my screen? Yes? Okay, perfect. Because for some reason it doesn't. All right, I can see it now. So today I'm not going to exactly talk about planting seeds, but rather what Andres and Clement also talked about, which is the shifting of the mindset. And I call this planting the seeds, right? Planting the seeds in our minds, in the future generations, for the change that we want to see. And the reason I want to talk about perspectives is that, like Clement and Andres talked about, there's so many solutions out there. There's so many ways of implementing it. There's so many different contexts. But ultimately, the most important thing is how we see nature and how we relate and how we create relationships. So I think the important thing is starting to see ourselves differently, starting to see nature differently, and that will inform our actions. And of course, our actions come from our beliefs, and our beliefs come from how we perceive, right? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about a few sort of perspective shifts that were really important for me to start this work. All right, let's see. So the first one is humans are a part of the ecosystem, that we are not the masters. We are nature. We are part of the ecosystem, and we're not separate, right? We're not we're not dominating the landscape. We're not these sort of playing God with plants. But the important thing to know is that agriculture is very deeply human. It's a very anthropocentric activity, and that when we do agriculture, we ultimately, whether we like it or not, we change the landscape. But we have a choice when we do it. We can change the landscape for better or for worse. The idea is like Clement and Andres talked about, is like listening for feedback with nature, with everything we do. If it doesn't work with this, what are the results? What is nature telling us? Oftentimes in academia, we want to look into the smallest of the smallest cells, the smallest of the smallest differences, and we ignore the bird songs, we ignore the beauty, the all the other things that nature is telling us, and we focus on those things, the little molecules. And of course, those are important in other aspects, but it's not the only solution, right? So one example I want to give is a Native American way of growing. And this happens, I believe, extends from north to south of the continent. In North America or Turtle Island, they call it the Three Sisters. And then in some places in the south, they call it the milpa. Do they call it the milpa here as well? Costa Rica, Honduras, do you know? Yeah. And so the idea is that you grow the corn first, and then the corn provides a structure for the beans. So you grow the beans next, and then the beans start to fix nitrogen into the soil, and then lastly you grow the squash. So it could be, I don't know, pumpkin or different kinds of squashes, and the squash provides a ground cover. So it's to show that everyone has a role. Well, where's the human role? The human is knowing when to grow these things, listening to nature and taking care of them and giving them attention and letting the system thrive. So you have the four sisters, actually, because the fourth sister is the human. And so we're all part of this nature system where we all have a role. Nothing is waste. We all take care of each other. And of course, at the end of the day, we eat the corn, we eat the beans, but then we can also compost the plant material that has gone dry, etc., right? So it's returning to that ecosystem. The next thing I want to share is that nature is not property; she's a gift, and she's our mother. Like Clement said, she's the land. Land is our mother, taking care of us constantly, and the idea of reciprocity. So nature gives every day. This is, unquestionable. Every breath we take is from a tree somewhere, right? Is not possible that we humans make our own breath, because all we breathe out is carbon dioxide, or more carbon dioxide than other things. So it's eventually, without nature, we're gonna suffocate. So even the most basic thing is coming from not ourselves. And another thing is that food is our closest connection with the land. It's how we take care of it is gonna dictate what we get out of it. So yeah, if we're gonna poison the land, well, guess what? We're going to poison ourselves. So what's the logic behind putting agrochemicals when we're going to eventually poison the land, and then there's going to be nothing left for our future generations, and even for us, really, there's no nutrients in the plants that is grown by agrochemicals. Studies on the tomatoes, the taste, the nutrition value of lettuce, of all these veggies that are grown with agrochemicals, and they don't taste the same. They taste like water. Water is great, but vegetables not supposed to taste like water. They have very, if they're not poisoning us, they're not giving us any nutritional value either. So the idea is reciprocity. We need to give to receive and receive to give. And what's the relationship we want to build with our land? What's the relationship we want to have? Is it a destructive one or a regenerative one that keeps on giving? And for the land to keep on giving, we need to give back too. The next one is that nature is wise. So this is a pecan tree. These nuts are pecans. And I'm going to read a excerpt from Braiding Sweetgrass. It's one of my favorite books, changed my life. The author is Robin Wall Kimmerer. So the word in Native American Algonquin language is pecan. I don't know if I'm saying it right, pecan, but it means nut. And of course, when the colonizers came, they were just like, oh, they're calling it pecan, so we're going to call it pecan. This is pecan now. It's an English word now. And interestingly, when I tried to Google pecan, it auto-corrected me to pecan. And I was so offended. Anyway, I'll read you the excerpt. Nut trees don't make a crop every year, but rather produce at unpredictable intervals. Some years a feast, most years a famine. Unlike juicy fruits and berries, which invite you to eat them right away before they spoil, nuts protect themselves with a hard, leathery husk and shell. They are designed to be food for winter, when you need fat and protein, heavy calories to keep you warm. They are safety for hard times, the embryo of survival. So rich is the reward that the contents are protected in a vault, double locked, a box inside a box. For mass fruiting to succeed in generating new forests, each tree has to make lots and lots of nuts, so many that it overwhelms the would-be seed predators like squirrels or humans. If a tree just plodded along making a few nuts a year, they would all be eaten and there would be no next generation of pecans. Mass fruiting trees spend years making sugar, and rather than spending it little by little, they stick it under the proverbial mattress, banking calories as starch in their roots. The interesting thing here is this. If one tree fruits, they all fruit. There are no soloists. Not one tree in a grove, but the whole grove. And not one grove in the forest, but every grove, all across the county and all across the state. These trees act not as individuals, but somehow as a collective. Exactly how they do this, we don't yet know. But what we see is the power of unity. What happens to one happens to us all. We can starve together or feast together. All flourishing is mutual. So when I read this, I was very amazed that trees that we think is this thing that doesn't move, can't walk, can't talk, that somehow when they fruit, they don't just fruit in one grove, but they fruit all over the state together in the same season. And for me, that's incredible because it's like they had a meeting, they had a conference, a council, and they said, hey, should we do it next year? No, maybe 2 years later. And they talked and they communicated and they did it all together and they made sure the survival of their next generation. So for me, that's a prime example of how, from a human perspective, we cannot see something so invisible. But if you pay attention, like the Native Americans have, they know that these trees only fruit unpredictably, but when they fruit all together. So for me, it's very beautiful how nature is very, very wise. And then here is the next one, which is that small local solutions work best, and we need to do a lot of experimentation. Especially now, since there's this whole, greenwashing campaigns, and the capitalists are catching on to, we need to be more environmentally friendly, and so there's so many new technology, high tech or ag tech, or all these fancy names, AI, smart farming, and whatnot, and even in in the more natural solutions, nature-based solutions, there's so many out there, right? When we're not talking about the greenwashing campaigns, there's so many ways of composting, so many ways of doing permaculture, so many ways of doing syntropic. There's just so much knowledge, so much information, and so you have to experiment for yourself. And of course, most of the farms in this world, most of the food that is grown is from smallholder farmers. And so you can do experiments, right? People say in this, in the capitalist system, the big agro companies, they say small farms cannot feed the world, right? They tell us that we need to rely on big agro to feed the world. Well, that's already not true, because 70% of our food does come from smallholder farmers. So, how are we not, eating right now if big agro has still not yet dominated, most of our eating? And in fact, all the fast land that grows food for big agro companies, most of them don't go to our plates. They go to the products like cotton, like palm oil in our shampoo, or all these, cosmetics, corn grown for cows and livestock. So a lot of these things don't actually make it onto our plates, but in other forms in our lives. Not that it's not important, but we really have to give more credit for the smallholder farmers that are working there. No worries.
Sure.
Yeah, so there's a lot of social, ecological, and environmental context, and they require different approaches. There are no one size fit all, no miracle spray, no miracle technology. We have to learn from our elders. We have to question. We have to remember words from our grandparents. Talk to people who care for the land. Talk to the native knowledge keepers. So, lastly, I just want to share this quote really quickly. We are all bound by a covenant of reciprocity, plant breath for animal breath, winter, summer, etc. Water knows this, soil knows this, and they are in a continuous giveaway of making, unmaking, and making again the earth. The moral covenant of reciprocity calls us to honor our responsibilities and for all that we have been given and all that we have taken in return for the privilege of breath. So it's a nice note to end, to meditate on. I hope we have all shared something valuable for people today, and people who will watch this in the recording. Thank you.